Hey y'all, so this is a new video where we're going to be coming back into the Master Level Puzzle Series episode number 4, where we're going to be working on 3 different puzzles today. 1 win, which is the puzzle you see before you, and 2 draws, this one and this one. These puzzles are very interesting. We have 3 more episodes, so if you enjoyed this, remember to come back for the other 3, and this is going to probably be a bi-weekly series on the channel, so be ready for that if you enjoy this type of stuff. Really, I'm just trying to waste time right now in order to allow you guys time to really pause the video and figure out this puzzle. This one is a win, remember, and this puzzle took me a decently long time. It has many pitfalls and traps, a lot of hidden little secrets in it that make it tricky to solve, so don't be ashamed if you can't solve it, because this is a really hard puzzle. And yeah, I think I gave you guys enough time, so we're gonna get into it. Now, the first thing that we look at here is that black is a pawn 2 squares away from queening. We have a pawn 2 squares away from queening. We're going for a win. We don't really want to let them promote, because then it would be an issue, but it might work in some lines. Let's see the first move that most people look at, and that move is bishop to e6. Bishop to e6 attacks the pawn, but the pawn just moves and the bishop does not have enough time to get there. And for example, after bishop e6, this move, and we try to promote immediately, and we go for this. Let me just put this on the board. Black promotes first, and black starts the checks. And this is a theoretical draw, because in the end, let's just say very theoretically, if black gets to this position is simply a draw, because although white's pawn is very close and white is up a piece, black is simply going to play this, and we have nothing to stop the pawn trade into a drawn position. So we can't allow that. And we have to find a way to either stop the pawn or promote with like a check or something, for example. So that makes the move pretty obvious, right? That makes the move pretty obvious. There's nothing we can do to stop this pawn except for this move, d6. And d6 manages to stop the pawn. d6 manages to stop the pawn because if the pawn pushes, then we go here, I believe. You can't queen, of course, so it takes. We push again to d7. This is one of the very interesting lines. Queen with check. We start the checks, and in the end of the line, we're at least going to be able to pick up this pawn, and then we should be winning. This is probably black's best try, but in the end, it's normally pretty easy for white to win these positions when they're starting with the checks, because white is a pawn 2 squares away from queening, and this position just should be a winning endgame for white. So that whole line works, right? d6 makes sense, and h2 is practically is a move. But there are other moves here. For example, the move pawn takes on d6. I mean, pretty natural. You're giving me a pawn. Let's take the pawn. He's threatening to promote in 2. So then how do we stop the pawn? This still doesn't work because now the king just takes. This still doesn't work because here, and he promotes faster. Let's just show. Here. He promotes quickly, and we probably might even lose that position. The only move that immediately stops the pawn is this move, bishop d5. Like I showed you earlier, the nice bishop sacrifice where we try to stop the pawn. And in this line, black is pretty much forced to take the bishop, because if they just push the pawn like h2, we're going to be able to stop it. He's going to try and get something like here, but then we promote faster and we easily win. So after bishop d5, black is forced to take our bishop. The only move that makes any sense is the push. The only move that makes any sense for black is the push. We make a queen, black makes a queen, and now, very important, on the fifth move of this puzzle, we have the move queen to a8. Very important. And now we pick up the queen into a winning endgame. And let's say black didn't promote. Say black goes here, We have a slew of ways to stop the pawn, primarily this way here, which is just pretty easy, or we could even go and get it with a check. Pretty simple stuff. So that position is winning, right? But there's still a couple more options after d6. There's the option of king takes d6. You might say, oh well, this doesn't really change anything, right? Because after bishop here, king takes here, 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 we have queen a8, right? But we don't. We don't have queen a8 because now black has this move. And this is probably a theoretical draw, but it's possible for white to lose this position. And we don't win the queen. So then what do we do here after king d6? How do we continue this position for a win? Well, bishop d5 doesn't work. You see, bishop d5 doesn't work because after king takes that line, black promotes faster and he has c6, and this is a draw. Now, are we going to be able to stop the pawn any other way? No. So then why are we even calculating trying to stop the pawn at all, right? What I see here is that the king is on a dark square. This pawn is going to promote, and it's going to promote with a check on the black king. So let's try to do that. Let's see in this position where the bishop can move that facilitates the advancement of the pawn. I don't think that it's on this side of the diagonal because this doesn't make any sense. And I don't think it's here because that also really doesn't make any sense. I'm not really doing anything from the g8 square. So the only move that makes any sense is this one. It's not that hard to find. Now the only move for black that makes any sense is this. We're not stopping the pawn, so we don't even have to try. f7 is the only move. Here, we promote with a check. All right, pretty simple stuff. And now you have to see a couple more tactics. If black goes here, black goes to the light squares, we have this check, takes, and now we win the queen because the king is on a square that the pawn cannot block it. And now he'd win the queen and we'd win the game. So we can't go there. What other moves he has? He has this one and this one. These two moves. Let's see this one. Okay, well, we can't allow him to stay on the dark squares. Let's force him to the light squares. This move, right? This one. And you might say, well, the bishop c6 trick doesn't work anymore because, well, now he can take and the queen doesn't have queen a8. But now the queen defends and we pick up the queen. And this is a simply winning endgame. And same for this square as well. The only other move here is this square, but then it's the same thing. And we win the game. We can also move the queen there, but this seems the cleanest to me. And that is the first puzzle, a very tricky puzzle to start with, but it's a good puzzle nonetheless. And let's get into puzzle number 2. Now this is puzzle number 2. This position is a draw by force. White is only playing for a draw here because black's bishop can always come and stop the white promotion, so there's no point even try. White is playing for a draw. White has to draw this position, and there are a couple things you have to notice first that I'll be going into later, but for now I want you to pause the video and try to figure it out by yourself. This is a hard position. It truly is. It took me some time to figure this out, so please do not be ashamed of yourself if you cannot find the position. Just try your best and manage to do whatever you can. All right, so the first thing you have to notice about this puzzle is that this pawn is basically promoting. The king is too far away, and this pawn is going to promote, and the king's not in the square, right? So how do we get the king in the square? How do we get the king in the square, you might ask? Well, okay, let's see. The king has to come back, right? The king has to come back to one of these 3 squares. Those are the most forcing squares. This move doesn't really accomplish anything because of just bishop here, and after king up here, we can probably just resign in that position because the bishop will sacrifice and there's nothing we can do. So how are we supposed to do anything here? The first move is very tricky. And it's kind of hard to see if you haven't seen a puzzle like this before, which is why I was a little hesitant about showing this puzzle, but it's still instructive, so I wanted to share it anyway. The first move is this very important move, king e7. Very important move. And you might say, well, what does this do? I mean, I don't get it. I mean, the pawn is just promoting. How are we supposed to stop? How are we supposed to stop g5 g5, g4, g3, g2, g1, queen, and lose. Well, I'll tell you how. After this move, king d6. If any bishop move comes, I mean, we're in the square, so we're okay. The opponent has to play this move. And now, a very important move, we play this move, e7. e7, and we're threatening promotion, right? But I said earlier that, of course, the bishop comes here and defends the promotion square. Well, that's forced. Let's play a bishop b5. And if we just move our king forward, we're still not in the square and we're going to lose. But luckily, we have just one exact tempo to be able to save this. And that's this move, king c7. That's why king e7 was the most important all the way back here, because we're getting closer to this square. And if we just went straight down, we wouldn't have the time to reach the bishop. And your opponent has to move the bishop, because if they just push, we take the bishop here, we queen. And actually, this is a draw, but I mean, white starts the checks. It's entirely possible for black to blunder this game, and we'd win. But after king c5, your opponent has to come here, and then we slide into the square, and this is simply a draw. Any king move is not fast enough. Our king comes faster, and easy drawn position. And that's how you solve this puzzle. A little bit shorter, but I hope we got the point across. Basically, the point is that we have to go king e7 first to try and get to the center of the board and target the bishop wherever it lands to go. A small side note, if after this move, and let's say this move, it still doesn't matter because the king becomes in the square here, and this is a simple draw. Yeah, so that was this puzzle. This one is pretty tricky. It's kind of a I don't know how to say it. It's like a memory thing. You have to learn how to do this endgame beforehand. And luckily for me, I did actually know how to do this. So this didn't take me too long, but it's a tricky thing for people to learn on the fly. So if you are able to do it, I congratulate you fully. That is actually pretty cool. And yeah, you should feel proud about yourself. So let's get into puzzle number 3, the last puzzle. Probably the second hardest one. I'd say the first one is harder, but this one is pretty hard too. This is a draw. Simply because black is up a bishop and we have really no way to defend all our pawns. So this one is pretty tricky. And let's see, the first move of this, I'm going to give you some time to pause and try to figure out the puzzle on your own. It is a draw. It took me a long period of time, like everything else, and you really should not be too ashamed if you are unable to figure out this one out. Now, let's get into the answer. The first move is pretty forced because black is threatening to take and then win, so we can't really allow that. The first move is pretty forced. It's this move, e7. There's not much else anything can do. And black is forced to take. If black doesn't take, if black goes here, this is actually pretty simple because yeah, I'm threatening all this garbage. In the end, after, like, for example, some bishop move back, I play this move, very important, h4, and the king, whenever it runs away, this king actually can, this king just queens, takes, here, and this is just simple draw because we will be trading the pawns, and black cannot actually push because we simply trade, and that would be a draw. That's not too hard to calculate. It's pretty easy. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of it, the skin and bones here, and let's get into what happens after black takes on e7. And now, after black takes on e7, we really still have only one move, and that's this move, king g7. It's pretty forced. Basically just saying, okay, I'm attacking the pawn. I'm forcing a response. I'm probably forcing I'm definitely forcing bishop here, because if your opponent were to push, then this move comes and you can't actually defend the black G pawn, and this would be a draw. You can draw for draw agreed. Now, after king g7, bishop f5, of course, the most normal move, defending the pawn. What do we have to do now? Well, there's a couple of things we have to do. We either have to push our pawn out of danger and prevent this from happening, or we have to go king to h6. Both a very reasonable move. Let's start off with this move, h4, stopping all this. I mean, that seems pretty reasonable. We're threatening to play king h6 and this, right? So that's pretty interesting thing. Black kind of has to waste a move here. If black moves with the bishop, it's basically the same thing. But let's say black wastes a move with king e6. King h6. My opponent goes king f6. Pretty normal stuff. And basically saying that that we can't actually push our pawn, because then he will push down and easily win the game. So we can't allow that, and we have to try and find something else, right? So after king h6, after king h6, like king f7, for example, trying to waste another tempo. If this move doesn't ever work, because after this, black can't push, because just simply king takes and it'd be a draw. So we have to find something else, and that's why we figured it out. And the good move, of course, is king h6, king f6, and actually after the move h5, which I showed you, but I kind of didn't want to show you this early, because this is just simply the answer. And this is kind of hard to see, but white actually gets stalemated in the middle of the board, which is pretty cool. And that's kind of why I wanted to show this puzzle. I wanted to go more in depth with this, but I guess I messed up and I showed the answer too early. This is the only answer to the puzzle. There's nothing else besides this. If, of course, black captures the pawn, this is a simple draw. And yeah, white is stalemated. We can't push the pawn. The king has no legal squares, which is really funny, and we can't take this pawn. So yeah, this puzzle was pretty funny, but it's a fun one to end off on, you know? So either way, those are those three puzzles. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will continue to try to find puzzles like these every 2 weeks. Maybe I'll be able to increase it to every week, but this normally will be coming out on Fridays and Thursdays. So keep an eye out for that. If you enjoyed this and you want to watch more content, I have a lot more on my channel. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys found this instructive. Remember to like, subscribe, and do all the normal things that YouTubers tell you to do. There we go. Good evening and good night.